Hello again. Today we're going to talk about actually assembling your models and how to put them together in different poses and such. I'm going to talk about this model here, my Castellan Knight, and I'm going to be talking about how I assembled the model, how I changed its pose, and how I made the base into the shape that it is. Enough of intro, we're going right into the video. Regardless of what model you have, it's a good idea to wash it before you cut or paint anything. Modern manufacturing techniques means the molds for our models need to be coated in a sort of oil or a powder to prevent the material from sticking to them. It also prevents the adhesion of primers to the plastic, so it needs to go. Thankfully, all you need is soap and water to get rid of this. Unless the model has a lot of spindly bits, a medium stiffness brush will clean faster than the soft bristles of a toothbrush. You don't need that level of precision with this work, and it'll clean faster. After letting the pieces dry for a while, you can start cutting the pieces out with side cutters. For large kits, following the instructions is a must. Here I need to know what pieces join where so I know what I can manipulate. Removing mold lines and injection zones is a vital part of the process. If you don't get rid of them, they'll stand out as light interacts with them in the final product. To strip mold lines, run a knife over them perpendicularly with light pressure. With a few strokes of the knife, the line is gone. You should cut away injection zones by having the knife as parallel to the surface as you can, then cutting the bit away. Make sure you cut away from your fingers. You don't want to cut the plastic as if you're whittling it away. It's too easy to gouge it, and you'll have to do unnecessary repairs. You just want to cut away anything that's excess. I assemble and glue some more parts so I can pose the legs and hips together at once. My scheme is that of a long deserted forge world, lost to time and nature. While the large weapons and huge broad shoulders of knights gives them an intimidating stature, they also have these round baby eyes, which gives them this weirdly gentle vibe. Much of my inspiration comes from the work of Miyazaki's Castle in the Sky, of a technologically advanced, but long since abandoned, fantasy society. When I originally started this project, I wanted my knight to be looking off in the distance, as if it took a long trek and was looking off somewhere, much like Luke Skywalker on Tatooine. But as I was working through the posing, I thought it would be more interesting to have the story self-contained. Going back to the Miyazaki vibe, there's a consistent technological nature hybrid, and I thought it would be cool if perhaps the knight was doing something in theme with that. With a rough assembly of the base model, I then use poster tack to hold the legs and hips together for posing. Here I can see if my idea is even possible without gluing and marrying anything together. Once I see that my idea is feasible, I can then move forward with my idea and start making more permanent changes. After finding the right pose, I start cutting joining bits of the model to make gluing possible, including joints and the back cables on the thighs, which prevent the leg from compressing the way I'd like. I smooth the surface down afterward with 300, 600, and 1500 grit sandpaper in order. Progressing in different grits will grant a smoother finish and waste less paper than going in with the highest grade and going after over and over and over again. I start gluing my parts together and assembling my pose. I start with one leg first, to ensure everything is in place, then move to the other. I want to commit as little gluing at once as possible. This way, if a mistake is made early, less things need to be broken to fix it. With my legs in place, I put the body on and see how the pose is. Small adjustments to a model's position give them a subtle nuance that can be overlooked on a tabletop, but upon closer inspection, they reveal themselves. Here I shift the model slightly to the left and glue it on, though in hindsight I probably should have left this dry for flexibility later. This is also a good time to try head poses without glue to see how things can be. I then work with the model's arms and some base details. Here I try to understand the basic idea of my base, the position of the model, and how additional base features will interact with it. I spend some time refining the base, moving my corkboard and terrain features until everything is correctly spaced. I then use white PVA glue to set every base material in its place. I begin thinking of the base now. Since the area is so large, it can help tell a story for the sculpt. I add a small fence section to the base to create a greater spoke gluing effect. This is a characteristic in paintings in which lines and objects in a scene all point towards a focal area. While the eye will naturally look at the head of the knight, I want the focus of this entire piece to be more off to the side. The vines help direct the eye towards the point of interest. I finished by gluing the knight to the base with CA glue. For the main ground texture, I used Liquitex Natural Sand. This is an acrylic gel that contains natural sand particles, usually as an additive for painting effects. Since the composite doesn't contain enough grit for my purposes, I have added a bunch of extra stuff, including coarse sand, fine sand, and small stones to give the gel more texture and volume. The gel is spread around the base of an old toasted brush and is left to cure overnight. At this point, I start to fix gaps and imperfections in the sculpt. Using Vallejo white stone, I start applying layers over the joining areas of the model. I move from one area to the next, letting the layer dry completely each time. After about 4 or so layers, I then take some 600 grit sandpaper and remove the excess. I check the gaps and see if I need more in them, going back and forth as much as I need, moving to 1500 grit after the first pass. I use a piece of styrene plastic, also known as plastic hard, to make a smooth edge for my base. I measure out along the side of the base of the plastic and cut a basic shape. I then mix up some green stuff putty so I can fill in gaps with barrier. I use green stuff here because I don't need the precise sculpting or sanding capabilities of other clays, and green stuff will more readily stick to the plastic. I then press the putty to the base and start laying out the styrene, forming a nice edge. I then use the green stuff to fill in the space between the plastic and the base until I get a nice even level. Afterward, I set some more of my texture down on the green stuff. This is also the time that I set in more texture on areas I feel needed, as the texture cured and left some areas a bit barren. I then cut away the excess styrene, mindful of the base level of the miniature. I want a very hard edge where the base cuts off from the environment, not a lip where the edge of the base rises slightly above the ground. I create a small bird's nest from beard lichen. This fibrous material grows worldwide on trees, and is a great material for creating vines and other stuff for miniatures. Here I take a small bundle of fibers, wet them, and wrap them around a large brush to give them shape. When the fibers are dry, they are very brittle, but water will make them pliable once again. I then add some Mod Podge glue to the fibers, which will harden them once they dry. I check to see how the shape is before determining that I need more. I then spend some time manipulating the fibers into shape and finessing the excess strands around to give a natural appearance. This small section of the base irritates me for how hard it cuts off, so I spend some time repairing it with sculpting clay and plastic art. This took some time to repair and smooth out in a manner I found acceptable, and the lesson here is to use a single piece of plastic, not two, for your base edges, as sanding this smooth was a pain in the side. Now I have the model set and ready for paint. Tune in next time and we'll discuss painting this beast. Take care.